What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Racially Speaking. I'm your regular host, David Phipps. And yes, joining me, as he often does, but not enough, it's my prodigal co host, AKA Mr. Michael B. Phelps, AKA Aquaman,
That's
AKA Mr. Two Chains. It's the
that's too many names.
social justice cowboy himself, Mr. Wyatt
Yep.
John Mark Walker. What's going on, brother?
Hey man, the social justice cowboy applies. The other ones don't. Michael B. Phelps. What's up, man? It's good to be
I just
back.
got, I'm going to keep adding to it.
Okay, keep adding to
I got to.
it.
Well, also, we're it's kind of rapport with the listeners because if you have
Right?
to listen to get all the jokes, I'm just gonna keep,
Yeah, that's true. That's
I'm
true.
gonna keep doing it.
Aquaman. I wasn't the one who jumped in the water, but I'll take that nickname.
Yeah, it's the swimming thing, it's a good
Yeah,
nickname.
because yeah, I did swim. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Of course,
Yeah,
social justice cowboy will always take the cake for the best one. I think I'm
that
proud
is
of that
me.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's me too. I'm proud of you for that one.
So what you been up to? Happy New Year's 2024. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Yeah, yeah. Happy New Year. Um, Up to the same. Go to the gym, playing video games, hanging out with my wife and kids. Nothing too exciting.
Did you get
Um,
any new video games?
no, I'm playing Pokemon. Pokemon
Pokemon.
on
What?
the Switch. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I put it down for a while, but the DLC, I've been playing some DLC, so
Okay.
it's fun. I never grew out of that Pokemon, my love for Pokemon from the time I was in like fifth grade when we
Mm.
couldn't have it at church because it was banned. To
Oh
now, I
man,
love
banned.
Pokemon. Yeah, because they're like spirits and stuff. And they evolved. It was bad.
Oh
So, but
wow.
now I love it.
Evolution,
Yeah,
man. Yeah,
yeah.
gotta stay away from that.
That's the kind of church I grew up in. Yeah, man. Yeah,
Well,
but
I think it's
doing
funny
well.
because, well, do you play Pokemon Go?
I did when it came out. I don't anymore.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, so we went through a phase where we let Ollie do that on our phone for a while,
Oh, that's
and
fun.
Caitlin may or may not have done it when it came out as well. But weren't churches often the places where you
They
go
were
for battles and stuff?
Pokestops. Yeah,
Pokestops, that's it.
gyms and Pokestops. They were. Yeah.
Well, that makes it funnier to me then.
Yeah, it kind of came back around on those churches that wouldn't let Pokemon. They were just
Yeah,
roaming outside their churches.
I'm just picturing your church and the pastors looking out the window like those
It's,
heathens. That's
yeah,
hilarious.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
hilarious.
yeah. But yeah, so I'm doing well.
Yeah.
What you up to?
So,
How are you? How are you doing?
yeah. Well, so are you guys healthy? Because I'm coming off strep. Two of the kids had
Oh
strep.
man.
Our littlest had RSV.
Oh no.
So the whole shebang. Well,
Yeah.
sickness hits us. Sickness specifically has hit the Phipps household over the major holidays over the last few years, like clockwork. So I'm happy to be on the upswing and feeling good now, but it's just, man, I would love to catch a break on a holiday.
Yeah, for real. That's rough. That's rough. Yeah, we dodged. We were able to do all the holiday stuff and dodge some colds and stuff.
Hmm.
Sniffles here and there, but we're good.
Yeah. Honestly, it's been
Yeah.
so long. This seems like it was a long time ago that, well, it was since me and you podcasted, but I'd say a bright spot
Yeah.
was being able to catch up with, our families catch up back right before Thanksgiving. We spent some time
Yeah. That's
in
a blast.
Richmond
You guys
with you guys for
we're
a few
we're over
hours. That
at
was
our
fun.
spot. Yeah, you're over at our
Yeah,
spot
good
hanging out. That was
times.
a good time. Yeah, it was fun. What did I make? Chili? Did we have
You
chili
made
that night?
chili is delicious.
That's my award-winning chili.
And
Yeah.
award winning, really?
Well, I entered it in a couple competitions, small competitions with my
Okay.
work team, and I won one of them.
Okay.
So I
There's got to
won.
be a
I took
nickname
home
there.
chili. Nah,
Got to be a
nah.
nickname. I'm gonna work on one.
For my chili. No,
Yeah.
okay. You work on it. You work on it. But yeah, that was fun. It
Well,
was good. I always like to
what
make
was it that we
chili,
put in
but
it?
did I put
I
in my
can't.
chili?
Well, there was something that was kind of unique that you had us put in it, and I can't remember now. For us, I think we do
Oh, I
avocado.
eat it. Eat it over rice. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that was great. Over
Yeah, I eat
rice.
it over rice. Yeah,
Never done that.
I really like it over spaghetti noodles, but that's my like Cincinnati, Ohio, where it's
Interesting.
coming out.
That's
Yeah,
interesting.
it's not. Yeah, something we do in Ohio, but
Okay.
yeah, I
It can't
always
be
eat it
that
over
different.
rice. I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure it happens other places, but that's my dad's side of the family.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That
Chili over
was
spaghetti.
chili
Yeah.
over rice. We loved it. I
Uh-huh.
forgot. I'd have to remind Caitlin that's what we got to do next time because we've had it several
Uh-huh.
times since.
Yeah.
Um,
Chili over rice.
yeah. Listeners, you're getting all this tons of advice from John Mark, the man of many
It's
talents.
delicious. Got to
Yeah.
do it.
Chili over
Oh
rice.
man,
That's good.
this is random. Today I had Qdoba. You ever have Qdoba?
I don't think I have, to be honest.
I didn't even know that they were still in existence, but I was in the airport. I was in the Atlanta airport and I was looking for some food and I was like, I'm gonna give Qdoba a shot. And
Huh.
it was subpar to Chipotle, just like always. It was
Okay.
just one step down. I was like, man, I wish I was eating Chipotle. Yeah.
How do you feel about Moe's?
Moses is good. Moses is different. It's not Chipotle.
Yeah.
It's not Qdoba. It's kind
Hmm.
of over on the side. It's like I don't want delicious. I'm gonna go to Moe's. Welcome to
Okay.
Moe's.
Yeah. Welcome to
But
Moe's.
I think they have like the endless chips. Last I was at Moe's, they had like bottomless chips. That was nice. That was nice.
What I
So
okay, I forgot about that. What I always remember is the queso.
okay,
Queso's
so
pretty good.
at Moe's,
Moe's, yeah,
yeah,
because so I
yeah,
grew up in Norfolk and we didn't have Chipotle. Like
yeah.
they got
You
Chipotle since I've
y'all got
been
Moe's down there.
away. Yeah,
Yeah,
so it was just
yeah,
always Moe's.
yeah.
I think it was too much and I can't even eat it anymore.
Really, too much.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah.
I'm in Radford where we have nothing, but we have had a Moe's for a long time and I don't even go there. We
You
now
have
have a
to have like you
Chipotle,
have to have
so
like a Mexican restaurant though.
lots of Mexican restaurants. We
There you
finally
go.
do have a Chipotle.
Authentic.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever done Qdoba.
Yeah. No, yeah. It's okay. This is my
Yeah.
announcement. Nobody needs to do Qdoba. Just go to Chipotle.
Yeah, interesting, bold move, Qdoba.
Yeah, it was worth a shot. It was either that or Chick-fil-A. I was like, I'll save the Lord's chicken for another day, and
Yeah.
I went
Mm,
Qdoba.
yeah. All right. Well, look, like I said, new year, new year, new us. Not just kidding. It's really the opposite. I wouldn't say we've ever been ones to do the obligatory New Year's end of the year reflections or New Year's resolutions, at least on the podcast. I don't know. Have you ever made a New Year's resolution? I literally don't think I ever have.
Once I made one to swear more. I felt like I was getting too
Swear more.
stuffy. So I wanted to start using specifically the S word, which I'm not going to use because family
Okay.
friendly show, but
Yeah.
specifically the S word. And I failed. I completely failed. It didn't enter my
Oh man.
vocabulary that year. So yeah, yeah. So that was one, but I don't typically
Okay.
do resolutions.
Well, that's a great segue because some of what I wanted to do today is not do a resolution but reflect a little bit on the podcast on the show that we've done for John Mark. I don't know if you knew this month it'll be 3 years, 3 years since I started this on kind of a solo-ish endeavor, and then 2-ish
That's
years
crazy.
since I brought you on and you um helped me out. So yeah, man,
That's
it's been a
crazy.
minute.
It
It's been a
has.
minute since we've been doing this. So I wanted to reflect a little bit, but I mean, should we combine your previous New Year's resolution and become an explicit show? Is that what you're saying?
See how many times
Non-family
we can say
friendly?
the see
Yeah,
how many times we can say the S word this episode.
yeah. Um,
No, I think we're good.
yeah. We probably shouldn't do that. Let's stay family
Yeah,
friendly.
probably not. Yeah, I think your mom
Um,
listens, right?
she does, she does.
Yeah.
Um, three, so 3 years, 3 years of the pod. Um, it I don't know if it seems like time has flown or time has crept along. I'm sure it's felt one or the other at different times. Um, look, why? I guess it's a question for me, but it's kind of for you because I mean, you decided to come on board as well. Why did we? I love to just ask each other, why did we start this whole thing, and
It's a
how do you
good
think it's
question.
gone? Like, let's assess
Let
ourselves.
me yeah, let me ask you a question. Why
Okay,
did you start the pod
okay.
and how's it gone or going?
Sounds a lot like what I just said.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Um,
So tell me about it. Why'd you start the podcast?
Yeah. So, okay, so yeah, I mean, literally, like at this month, I didn't intend to do it. I know I said never do New Year's resolutions, but just kind of coincidentally, I've been working on it for a while and released it 3 years ago, in January this month, and yeah, I could take up probably a whole episode on just this one question, but here's kind of the bare bones. So, racially speaking, um, probably evokes different things from different people, even here in the title. But look, ultimately, I started it because I felt like there was a need for it, not necessarily a need for me, like to hear my voice, like I'm, a profound person or person with knowledge or anything, but this was needed, um, in a sense of it didn't exist. I'm not saying there's not tons and tons of good podcasts out there or other people or other things that are having these types of conversations, but I felt like it was missing in the spaces I was in. Um, and I felt like it was an urgent thing that I personally was looking for and couldn't find. Um, and I also knew many other people that needed it. So what I mean is,
So,
so do the math, 3-ish years ago, 2020, 2021, things were very different. Um, a lot of racial tension, racial reckoning, and even preceding that, even you can go all the way back 2015, even with
mm,
contentious issues going on. Um, I just felt what I mean by spaces I was in. I work, I quasi work in academia on college campus, and then also in ministry and in church setting. I felt like there was not adequate, helpful conversation happening about specifically justice and even more specifically racial justice.
mhm.
I felt like that was really, really, really important. And so I felt like it needed to be there. And, you know, this is very clear, I'm sure, but I I knew that there was other podcasts out there and stuff, but I felt like somebody who actually didn't have a huge platform could be valuable in this space, like
Mm,
myself. Like I would always encourage people to listen to the bigger name people, like a Jamar Tisby, or a Truce Table or something like that with Christina Edmondson and Dekemini. But I felt like somebody who had no platform like me, it would be valuable to hear conversations that I was having with people like yourself, John Mark, and other people we've had on the
mhm,
podcast. And I just felt myself having conversations like maybe me and you would have, or me and my friend Zach would have often, who was on the first couple episodes with me and kind of helped me get this thing off the
mhm.
ground, actually. I feel like we would talk about what we were going through and what was going on in our country with race and justice and stuff, and especially in Christian spaces and whatnot. And then I leave those conversations feeling like, wait, this is actually the type of conversation that people need to hear, but no one's around when it's just us talking.
Mhm.
And we're not able to have these types of conversations when there are people around. And so we need to create our own space. So that's a little peek, behind the curtain of like what it looks like when
Yeah,
people say like we needed to create our own space. And I wasn't saying like we need to create our own space so that like I can get a megaphone and say whatever I want or like be divisive or something. I was like, no. Like I need to create a space because it doesn't exist, and it doesn't exist for a lot of the same people who are in my situation or look like me
right.
or whatnot. And so, and then just logic or logistically, podcasting for my personality seemed like it fit ish. Like I don't consider myself a very like a gifted public speaker. And this is
Mm,
kind of like a public speaking thing, but we're not in public while we're recording.
right.
And so, it was kind of a win-win. And it wasn't high pressure, like, oh my gosh, I'm like in front of a huge live audience, like even
Right.
on radio or something. It's like, okay, worst comes to worst, I'll never release what we record. And by God's
Well,
grace,
you're not
we've
going to
been
tell
able to
them about
release some
our
stuff.
live tour. You're not going to tell them about
Yeah.
our live tour coming up.
If someone wants to front some capital, we would love to do a live tour.
Yeah, I'd go.
Yeah.
But then
Um,
we'd have to release it because it'd be live. It'd have to be released.
Also true. Also true. Um, anyway, that was queer as mud answer for you, John Mark?
No, that was a good answer. So, what were some of the events, if you take us back to the beginning? What were some of the things
Oh
that
gosh.
I guess precipitated you starting this? Look at that word
Mm-hmm.
that prompted you to start this podcast. I mean, I could take us back to like 2020 and
Mm-hmm.
the civil rights moment that we had,
Yeah.
kind of flashpoint, right? That in the wake of George Floyd's death, which was, uh, I mean, his death was preceded by Breonna Taylor's murder and Ahmaud Arbery's murder, and then so
Mm-hmm.
many other killings of black and brown people. Um, so that I have to assume that was part of it, right? The
Mm-hmm.
motivation, what was happening in 2020. But what are some other things that stick out in your mind over the years that I don't know, either kept it going, uh, kept the necessity in front of you, or even prompted you to want to start it?
Sure, sure. Um, well, I don't remember exactly the year or time where I started to feel like I need to be more vocal, or I started to see the disconnect in how to have conversations on racial reconciliation around my circles. But for sure, and I've been pretty clear about this from the get-go, but um, would be when former President Trump um, kind of announced his running and candidacy type stuff, and seeing not
Mm-hmm,
just that happened, but seeing people's reactions,
mm-hmm,
Christians. And, I was never super, political or cared that much about, stuff like elections and, and whatnot. I was, quasi informed, but, I didn't necessarily feel the weight of how voting affects people or policies affect people's lives personally, or I wasn't just in proximity enough to people who I could see, oh, if this person is making these laws or rules or regulations, it's going to be bad for you, or the opposite, like
mm-hmm,
it's going to
mm-hmm,
just make you richer, or um protect what, I don't know, what you have at the expense of others. And so um it my eyes were just open. There's nothing I did. It was just
mm-hmm,
observations. And it wasn't just observations that were hard to see. It was more people's reactions in the way that I feel like I was taught and conditioned to think would not be so. And for example, like I just I never thought that speaking up about racism, and this is very naive looking back, but the Lord has met me in my naivety through it all. But I think I knew racism was bad, like most people would profess, and
mm-hmm,
that people would agree is not a good thing. And so that, to me, that's like bottom shelf material. And so I think I viewed it as, I didn't view it as something that needed to be delved into deeply,
mm-hmm.
if that makes sense, John Mark. And so I
It
think I
does,
just
yeah.
existed my most of my life feeling like, oh, these people, I grew up around mostly white people, mostly white
Mm-hmm,
Christians. I think I just operated with the belief that, oh, I'm around these types of people, I'm safe. And if anything racist happens, like obviously everyone around me
mm-hmm.
is, on the same page and agrees that all of this is bad. We all agree on
Right,
all of these
right,
issues.
right.
It sounds so naive saying it out loud right now, and that, it's strange. But then
I
when,
don't I don't know if I would say that you're naive for thinking that. I mean,
uh,
I feel like I probably felt similar in a similar situation, growing up in
mhm,
a predominantly white church. That was just the community I was in. And like nobody was
yeah,
overtly mean to me. Like nobody was saying, get
mhm,
to the back of the bus or, you know,
right,
writing words or calling me words or physically assaulting me. Right. So
right,
that so I mean maybe naive is a word, but I think just not having yet matured, right? I would even
mm,
hesitate to say immature, but just not having yet
yeah,
matured in our views of what racism is and how it's displayed. And it's this racism is such a broad term, that it encompasses the worst of the worst of slavery and the Ku Klux
Right.
Klan, Nazi Germany, caste system in India.
Yeah.
It's like the worst of the worst of how you treat people, to also just like indifference, like
Yeah.
you're never going to get promoted because I have a preference for people who are like me, like just subtle things of how we relate to each other. So it's the extreme. So I think it's just we had to mature in our understanding of how we interacted in the worlds that we came up in, and um,
Yeah.
I think that's part of it, of this, is that we have this platform allows us to have more nuanced conversation around um, not just the when the police officer goes crazy, but what's the system behind, why black people are more violently policed than white people. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think this allows us to go deeper on those things.
Yeah. Um, so I mean, absolutely. Stuff like Trump winning 2016. And again, it, I was new to the whole even following an election that closely, but if you can take yourself back to 2016, like it was kind of a surprise that he won, in a sense of, from what I just outlined about how I felt, I I in no way until the very end like thought he was going to win. And I wasn't, all panicky or anything like that, but it was understanding the basic, like, paint with broad strokes, the classic nature of Christians who are just, Republican. If you're a Christian, you're a Republican type thing. And that was just alone a rude awakening of, I grew up around that, and I didn't necessarily think it was the worst thing, but I was just kind of like 50-50 with it. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, who cares? It's politics. Like, they're all the same. But then
Mm-hmm.
I think part of me was just like, oh, but I mean, if something's this obvious, like, Christians are good people, we're going to
Yeah,
be on the
yeah.
right
We're
side.
not
Like,
going to be for
no,
that guy.
there's no
Yep.
way we would put somebody this novice. And just the the amount of Christians, not necessarily, so it wasn't all these individual conversations of people being like, oh yeah, I'm supporting Trump, 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 Trump. It was more just the statistics, or like the overall feeling, like the lack of wanting to talk about it, the complicity, the not both siding, but the sermons they quickly turned into, oh, we're not saved by, a president or a leader, so we're just
Mm-hmm.
going to preach unity and Jesus and move on. We're not going to worry about, don't worry about what, he's saying he's going to do, or what he's saying about these types of people, and black and brown people often, or the disadvantaged and other countries, all this stuff. And to me, I was just like, wait. All those kinds of like deers in the headlights moments, where maybe not deer in the headlights, but moments where I was just like, hold on, what are we doing here? Like, I don't think we have to have it all figured out, but I just kept being stunned and disheartened by how much further back we were than I thought we were in these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I think, again, I still don't know a better word, but I just ignorantly maybe thought we were much farther along, that when something like objectively awful is being spouted off unapologetically by somebody who's like could be in charge of like people in our country, that'd be an easy like talking point to like dismiss. But it was met with,
Right.
oh, if like there's something wrong with you if you're bringing this up,
Right. Right.
or the both side proclamations from up front, and even just, reading statistics that, of course, who, like, if you want to argue statistics, that's fine, but that 80% of, white evangelical Christians, I think it was, voted for somebody like this. And then, anyway, I don't want to turn this into just all the political thing, but that was a big thing that propelled me into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that started a bunch of the factions that are in the church still now, and in a lot of other circles.
Mm-hmm.
And then I mentioned, when we even were starting the podcast, like, our intention was, me and Zach's intention was to just start it, but we kept trying to pick a time or a day to release the first episode, do the first episode. and because we didn't want to like purposely end up to be out there as like quick bait, or to
Mm.
exacerbate something that's going on. And we kept picking days, and then something would happen. Like
Oh, really?
there'd be a huge headline, and be like, "Gosh, I don't want it to be like, oh, we're starting it because this happened," or like,
Yeah.
we can't start it now because we didn't talk about this, and it's gonna be awkward that we didn't address the
Mm.
biggest thing going on. So it happened like
Mm.
it felt like 3 or 4 times. So then finally we're like, all right, we're just gonna record and release what we got. And if we have to give a caveat when we release it, that's fine. And then
Hmm.
literally like January 6th was like going on,
Oh my goodness.
happened. And
Really?
I'm like, well,
That's
okay,
crazy.
look, we're gonna read up, follow, like we're just gonna talk about it.
Yeah,
Who
it
cares?
was
Like,
a storm. It was
yeah,
a tumultuous. I don't even know how to say the word. It was there
tumultuous,
was
yeah.
yeah, there's that word. Yeah, it was a storm. It was a stormy season. Yeah.
And so we talked about, January 6th, which we just had another anniversary of. Talked about
Yeah.
politics. I mean, 2017 Charlottesville, um,
Mm.
and obviously the murder of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, all that, all these things that happened that were just, to me, objectively terrible, unjust things,
Hmm.
most of which had ties to specifically racism that I couldn't believe wasn't being addressed in a more responsible way. And as part of the first question, it's not that I thought, okay, I'm the best person to do this. I'm an expert, but I wanted to use what knowledge and what quote unquote credentials I had. Because I do think it's funny, because I think podcasting is interesting to me because anyone can do it, which I think is a good thing. But then anybody can do it, so it can also not be a good thing. And I'm a big believer. That's why we bring guests on, John Mark. But I'm a big believer
Hmm.
in people who have expertise. But I wanted to use this platform to use our expertise to a sense, and we're experts in some of this. I wouldn't say we're like the most expert level in racial discussions, but one, we have a
Yeah.
obviously personal stories and experiences, but the things we talk about, I feel like I felt enough pride and confidence in what we are experts in. And we've both done Christian ministry for over a decade. We've obviously, are in our mid 30s, living as Asian man, Black man in America.
Hmm.
We were in college, we work in college spaces. And so that's quasi expertise. And then we, ride the coattails of some brilliant people we bring on here. Um, it kind of, my hope is to kind of synthesize these conversations. I know that many people listening, including us, are in the church or Christians. I also wanted to make it accessible to people who might not be Christians. I've even had people on who
Hmm.
aren't Christians, because I think that, again, this is kind of a nod at justice and a little bit of a knock on where the church is at right now. But I kept noticing that I had more in common in speaking out about justice with people that didn't identify as Christians often. And I felt like that was interesting to me. So I wanted this to be a space where we could at least have common ground talking about that stuff, and that being helpful, moving the needle as far as justice goes, even if
Hmm.
we didn't, share the exact same religious beliefs. And that's not, I've never compromised my beliefs, never asked someone else to compromise their beliefs, but that we're on the same page with what justice could look like. And
Hmm.
I just felt a weight of a lot of Christian spaces, to be frank, and some non, that I was a part of, not having the capability, but more often the willingness to have these conversations, especially in a
Mm.
way that would require responsible action. Um, I don't know how do I do answering that. You got anything to add?
It was good. No, I don't think so. That was a good answer.
So John
I
Mark,
think
yeah. So well, hold on. So
I was gonna say my next question, but you go ahead.
I had you. I think you're around like episode 10 or 12, somewhere in there.
Sure.
Um, and then we kind of hit it off after that. So I'd
Yeah.
wonder. I don't think I've ever asked you this, but I'd wonder made you kind of latch on to listening in on the podcast and then say yes when I asked you to come on and co-host it with me?
Well, so I think you posted something about it on Instagram, which I was not on at the time, and then I got on, and then now I'm no longer on. But I think you posted about it on Instagram, and my wife found it, and we were friends, we were acquaintances, we were friends from
Yeah.
work, and so I like listened to it. So even in my work, so I work in the cross cultural space, the DEI world, right? So I talk about diversity a lot, but sometimes it like race, culture, ethnicity. Sometimes I think now still today I spend more time corporately talking about ethnicity and culture, and less time talking about racism and racial interactions um and so I felt like and feel like I need an outlet for that, right? And
Mm,
I think back when I was on your episode, that felt like a natural way for me to talk about things that I didn't get to talk about in work in a way that I didn't get to talk about, but I wanted to. And I felt like it was important to talk about those justice issues. Um, and so I was excited about your podcast. I don't remember what the topic was that you brought me on to talk about. I remember feeling like a great conversation, and then us just connecting off of the recording. Um, Felt like a natural friendship that we built, and then being more regular, trying to be a co-host, but
mm,
schedules. So yeah, yeah, that's what I remember. That's what I recall. So
yeah. I'm looking
um,
back. You were on episode 12. So
okay,
listeners, go back and re-listen to that one.
yeah, to
Um,
my first episode. I wasn't the social justice cowboy yet.
you weren't the social justice cowboy yet. But we talked. Oh, it looks like, hey, shout out to Esau McCauley, the Reverend Dr. Esau McCauley, who we recently had on. Oh, you talked a
Yeah,
little
is
bit
that who we
about
talked about? Did we talk about
you
Reading While Black?
reading while black a little bit. Um,
Okay,
and
yeah,
I don't have a super descriptive thing of what we talked about, but yeah, I
yeah.
remember now that we talked about reading while black and get them out.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's good. It's fun to walk back memory lane. My question for you though is now what do you think is the need for this? Like, uh,
Mm.
have we grown in society? Do we still need these conversations? Why do we? I guess a better question would be why. It's more leading. I don't think the answer is no, we don't need these
Uh-huh.
conversations. But
It was actually our
yeah.
last episode. No.
Yeah,
Yeah,
why? What's it
so
like now? Yeah.
right, I wanted to reflect on that a little bit. Like I said, when I started it, I thought there was a need, and so I would love for there not to be a need. With that said, I don't. I think we do need to answer this. Like we not have the answer, but I think we have to talk about it. I don't know um how much things have changed or how much we as a people have grown
Hmm.
um since I started this. Not I don't mean to base that off of just how much have people grown from listening to it. I just mean like in general, these types of conversations, like the need for them to be had. So like I do think unfortunately it's needed. We're headed into 2024, another election year, and it just feels like I hope this is not the case. I keep seeing headlines of all the other podcasts that have been releasing stuff that's, a lot of them I listen to of just like, is 2024, another year? Is this a year we should fear again and all that? And like, I'm not a doomsday type person, but I
Hmm.
just think like it sucks that it feels like, holy cow, we're here again. Like it feels that we're not, it's not COVID, but it feels like things are just as, if not more in some ways, as contentious with these issues that we've been talking about.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure what to think about it. Like I do think it's needed because, like I said, I think a lot of the same things are still happening, if not more so. But I don't. Yeah. Again, it's called racially speaking. I specifically felt like race is something that was consistently taken out of context, still is, but was kind of sidestepped or avoided whenever something was going on. And so I really felt like, called and purposeful in focusing on those things, not with the goal of forcing it, like, oh well, let me figure out how I can make this about race. No, it was like, no, how can I talk about the racial issues that are behind all this when no one
Hmm.
wants to talk about it, honestly. um so I don't know, like maybe down the road a name change, who knows, but for right now, uh, yeah, I mean, what do you think? Because i I'm not sure. I think as far as our podcast has gone, we've done a good job in a sense of, I don't think we've stretched ourselves to talk about too many different things, but we stayed faithful to try and talk about things that are important, not
Hmm.
sidestep things, but also not feel like we need to speak up about everything or that we're experts in
Right.
everything.
Right.
And so hopefully that's been helpful, listeners. But moving forward, like there's plenty of conversations I know we're gonna have, and plenty of people we're gonna talk to. But I'm not like, I I would trade all that for me being able to have a long list of things that I can see not necessarily directly correlating to us, but changing like out in the real world, like that this void wouldn't still be there, like in Christian spaces. That,
Mm.
and what I'm getting at is I just see too much of this move on mentality. Like, oh my gosh,
Mm.
thank God that where it's not 2020 anymore. We can just move on and let's work on repairing all this division and tension that we've had over the last 3 or 4 years. And to me,
Mm.
I'm like, I'm asking myself or ask people who I hear say that, I'm like, well, how, like, what are you or what are we moving on from or
Hmm.
healing from? How are we healing? Who is healing?
Hmm.
And like, what are we repairing? And I think too often the answer is, well, time, that kind of time heals all wounds mentality. It's like, well, to an extent, but
Yeah.
what actual things have we done that now things are different? And I just, too much has not happened in my opinion. And I don't know if
Yeah.
you agree with all that, John Mark, that it's like, how, why is so much still the same then? Like, why
Yeah.
why is stuff still exactly the same?
Yeah. I think I agree. Not much has substantially changed. I think there's still a lot of dehumanizing rhetoric.
Hmm.
Um, I think people grew tired, right? I think
Hmm.
there's a verse that says, "Let us not grow weary of doing good." Um,
Hmm.
and as a Christian, I think if we're not sustained by the Lord, by Jesus, by God, in this type of work, then we're not going to keep doing it. We're going to be like, it's easier to just live with whatever we're living with, however we're living, right? Instead of um, stirring things up. I don't think that's a bad like. I think you could use it as a good phrase to draw attention to injustice, racial injustice, to draw attention to um, people who say things and dehumanize others with their words and actions that are reprehensible, that they shouldn't say those things, right?
Hmm.
Words have consequences, actions have consequences. Um, and yeah, you aren't the problem when you call something out. Now there are ways you shouldn't call
Right.
things out in better, good ways and bad ways, but just by simply saying, "Hey, look at that car wreck," it doesn't mean you're the one who's causing the car wreck. Maybe someone should
Right.
take that driver's license away. It doesn't mean that you're the cause of the bad driving, right? So, um, yeah. So I think this type of platform, what we do, is still very needed, because I think there will continue to be um, outpourings of racism. Um, and then there's also the more subtle forms that we just become accustomed to because, when was it like the frog in the pot? Things just boil around you. And it's like,
Hmm.
I see it, I experience it. It's getting hotter and hotter. I'm not going to jump out or say anything, right? So I think we with this platform are able to point things out and say, look at that. Does that line up with how we as people should live? Does it line up with how God would have us live, with who God is? Does it line up with love and justice? And if not, should you really be behind that,
Hmm.
So, um, yeah, I don't think things have changed, but it's interesting. I was thinking about like the civil rights movement,
Hmm.
right? And then when I think about that, like my mind goes back to, I mean, voting rights, women's suffrage, and then it goes back to like uh, slavery, just the history of our country. And um, in every generation, there is a group of people who wanted to bring about social justice change. And in every generation, there is a group of people who label them as something negative, like they take the term, whatever they call them,
Yeah.
and it's negative. So in slavery, it was abolitionists,
Hmm.
and Christians would use that and be like, "Oh, you're just an abolitionist," as we use
Mm.
like
Yeah.
social justice warrior today, right? And
Mm.
it's like consider where you would stand with the words that you use today. Where would you be all throughout history? Which side would you be? Would you be for justice, or would you be for the way things are and the abusive power structures that are? And yeah, so we need people
Yeah.
who will say things, and this podcast is one of those spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so we recently, as we said, had the Reverend Dr. Esau McCauley on the show. Um, and then I'm just gonna credit ourselves with launching him into like a tour, a press circuit for
Podcasts.
his book because he showed up on
Yeah,
all
he's
the
in
other
all the
podcasts
major ones. Yeah, all the major
right
ones
after
after
us.
ours.
I mean, so
Yeah, which is
I'm
wild.
glad we got his name out there for him. I'm sure it helped him a lot. But
Little known author, right?
yeah, absolutely. He showed up on Dr. Jamar Tisby's podcast, not Pass the Mic, but Footnotes, the one that he does solo
Hmm.
typically.
Hmm.
We both listened to that. It's fantastic listen. They, they said something on there that I thought was interesting. Um, I guess it was Jamar, but they mentioned this sentiment or this phrase, people speak about, or people who speak about sorry, people who are speaking about race in Christian spaces um typically either burn out, get pushed out, or sell out. So they kind of talked
Hmm.
about that kind of sentiment. So
Hmm.
people speaking up about race in Christian spaces either burn out, get pushed out, or sell out was their
Hmm.
observation. And so they're kind of talking how the two of them have been doing it for a very long time, obviously. But that stuck out to me because we've been doing it personally a lot longer than this, but on this podcast, let's just say for 3 years now. How would you, and for the audience, John Mark, our listeners, like, how would you say we have done with that or are doing with that? So,
Hmm.
burnout, get pushed out, or sell out.
Hmm.
I thought that'd be a good thing to reflect on. So this is with the backdrop
Well,
that we have succeeded with those three things. Like we're still here.
yeah.
Okay, but I guess it
Well,
doesn't. Let's not assume that. Let's talk about it. Have we
yeah.
done this?
Yeah. We're still here, but I mean, we were in communities that we're no longer in because we were talking about these things, right? Especially,
Sure.
right.
Hmm.
So, um, yeah. So I've left spaces because we tried to pursue talking about racial justice and it wasn't received well. So then I moved to
Hmm.
another space. So
Hmm.
I think that's a form of being pushed out, right? Um, yeah, and then the sellout thing, right? So the civil rights movement moment in 2020 was like this flash fire, right? It was hot. It was things were burning up, right? Um, and everybody was paying attention. The world was like, what's going on? Like everyone was paying attention to it. And
Yeah.
then now it feels like it's kind of calmed down and it's still hot, but it's not, super high temperature, burning everything that comes close to it, right? Um, and so people are like not paying as close attention to it. People aren't talking about it as much. And um, I don't know if that calls for a different way to approach it. Uh, I don't know if we've changed. I don't know if I'm speaking for myself. I don't feel like I've grown any more tired of speaking about racial justice or for racial justice. I'm no longer pursued as much to speak about it. I find
Mm,
myself speaking more about culture and cultural awareness, um, which is adjacent to it, but it doesn't directly go after, racial justice. So, or racial unity. So, um, that's something I've noticed. But um, my conviction is still talk about racism, talk about
hmm.
history, and talk about how God would have us care for each other. So um, I don't feel like I've sold out,
So what would it
but
look like?
I might look like I've slowed down or something. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. What
Yeah.
would I mean, I think I would attribute slowing down more to the burnout thing, but I see what you're
Mm.
saying. But what for people that might be confused even with the sellout part of that sentence. So, I mean, what would it look like, say we did sell out? Like, what do you think that would look
We'd
like?
be we'd be interviewing Candace Owens if I'm gonna name drop,
Okay, okay,
right?
okay. Yeah.
We'd
Oh,
be
that's an
like, oh,
extreme example. Okay.
I used to talk about racism, but I don't think it exists. I think everybody's individually responsible or something, stuff like
Mm,
that. We'd be like
okay.
opposite of what we talked about.
So why would
We'd
that be
be our
like
counter arguments.
why would that be selling out? I'm putting you on the spot.
Or
Well,
yeah,
let's just break
yeah,
it down
yeah,
for people.
yeah. I don't know, that might be more of a betrayal, but another sellout would just be like, hey, if you stop talking about it, all these good things will happen for you, right? And
Yeah,
yeah, and then we're just complicit we're silent on what we would have talked about, and we're complicit with what's going on because we're benefiting from something
right.
or another, right? That would be selling out.
Right.
So
The benefiting factor is the X factor to me.
yeah,
The benefiting element. I mean, that's kind of the epitome of yeah, selling out. Yeah, I mean, eh,
yeah.
I would take it even uh, not a step further, but a step back even of like it's been a little more subtle for me when I think about this because I was never gonna do that. I know you're not saying we would either. Like I was never gonna go the Candace Owens route or anything and avoid
An
talking about
extreme
race
example.
on racially speaking. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Man, to me, and this is a lot more subtle, but um we're just staying committed to having the honest conversation. Like yeah, I don't say it every time now, but like I say, and it might sound kind of generic, but in our description or our whatever tagline, slogan of the podcast, just honest conversation, and real conversation about racial justice, right? And so, and I'd even add to that that leads to change, it leads to action. And so, the unfortunate thing is that these things are kind of all synthesized together if you're committed to it. The
Mm.
burnout, sell out, or get pushed out, like it's kind
Mhm.
of a fluid thing. And so we're kind of navigating that. And so
Mhm.
something I'd say that for me, I really didn't want to sell out. And it was a learning curve as I started it because I started to realize, oh, like I, as much as I'd like to have even certain people on who I might even be really close to, I've kept this place pretty this mic pretty sacred and close to the chest. Like I'm not just gonna throw somebody on here. It's never been a place where I'm like, oh, let's get somebody on here that we can like have some big disagreement with. I think there's a time and place
Mhm.
for that maybe down the road, but it's been a place more of healing and safety and liberation is what I wanted to err on the side of. And
Mm.
I just unless I've never had somebody on here. I don't think I've done best I could. I've not had anybody on here that I haven't really been 99.9 to 100% sure that we have the same intent on our
Mhm.
conversation. Like I've never brought somebody on here that I'm like, "Oh, I hope they don't get on here," and then we kind of disagree with the whole backdrop of why we're on here. I don't mean like
Mm.
we've had people on here that yeah I probably disagree with a little bit with like maybe some practical things or maybe even their yeah, a little bit of their heart posture towards something, but overall, I wasn't gonna have somebody on here that there's people on here. This is a sellout thing. Like there's you and I both, and you know what I mean, John Mark. Like know plenty of people that would for sure get a lot of listens and downloads that we could have on here and that we could facilitate a conversation, it might be fine. But
Mhm.
it would get away from what I just talked about. Like it wouldn't be the kind of conversation that
Mm.
if I'm a person of color, especially in a Christian space that needs to be heard and seen, that I'm gonna tune into. It would get away from that really quickly.
Mm.
And I remember early-ish on in the podcast, I'd have to look back. Maybe I'll do that as I'm talking, but I didn't sit down and say, okay, this is my intent. But I realized I was, let's see, I must have been 30 or so episodes in. I hadn't had like any white males on the pod. And I realized that like late, I was like, I didn't intend. It's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna do this and not have any white guys on. And I know a lot of white guys. I'm close to a lot. And this isn't
Mhm.
a specific knock on anybody specifically whatsoever, but it's just it was an innate like outpouring of, there's something like I'm talking to my black and brown friends and acquaintances and women that are just in my circles
Mhm.
that just are the innate ones that I think of or think of me and what we're doing on the podcast and want to be part of it. And to me, that's just indicative of history when it comes to these conversations. That not that no white men have been part of it, but it's just right now where we're in, the times we're in right now, that's just the type of people who we find ourselves more in solidarity with, who are for us.
Mm. Mhm.
And I would love that to not be so. Like, I really, really, really would. But to me, I'll be honest, like that's what I think about that I've avoided selling out. Like, I would love if there was like a infinite list of all the people we know who are, white male pastors or white male campus ministers, all this stuff that I'd be, oh man, I can't wait to have them on and share like how
Mm.
like their passion for this. But there's just not a long list of ones that I know without a beyond a shadow of a doubt that are committed to it. And
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
comes full circle. That's why I feel called to keep doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think episode 32 was the first time I had my friend and pastor, but uh Vince on, who
Mm.
is one of, if not the person I've been closest to with a lot of these conversations. Like that has a white young male pastors uh showed nothing but solidarity and understanding.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's and he's part of what I'll say about a relationship like that is he is aware through and through of not just how to show solidarity, but why somebody like me, somebody like you, John Mark, would be reluctant to trust him. And that's like something that I feel like uh, a lot of people are just sometimes unaware that is a necessity, but are often unwilling to
Mhm.
embrace. Um, so yeah, I don't know. You got anything to add to that? I mean, I think with the burnout,
Yeah.
do I get tired of this sometimes? Not podcasting, but like that I committed to doing this with my life, like speaking up about this. Sure,
Yeah.
like would be easier not to.
Yeah. I feel like we've
Um,
talked about that before,
you
where
know,
like if we could go back and not talk about it and not be aware of it, how much easier would that be? Just like,
yeah,
blissfully ignorant to the hidden racism around us, like that was easier.
sure,
Be like, oh yeah, that's just, two individuals, one abusing another. There's nothing systemic about that, that would be easier, but
yeah.
that's not reality. So we can't live in that, it's not
It's
wise to
that
close
it's
our
definitely
eyes to
too late.
things.
Definitely too late now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, yeah, I hear what you're saying about I mean having your pastor friend on and yeah, I mean, so where does that leave us again going forward? Um, what do you think the future holds? Like, will we have we grown enough to have people like that on? You know what I mean?
hmm
Like, or even just are we growing in conversations off of the mic, off of recording with people who wouldn't have previously had these
hmm
conversations or been aware of hidden racism around them?
Yeah. I think it's both. I think that me and you have changed in a way of like we've grown and could have more of those conversations on here with people we might not be quite like positive that it's going to be like we just outlined, but can have maybe conversations where the gap is a little wider and we need to have some nuanced conversation for us to learn as well, but then to be okay with, because for a while I was just, I was not in a place to want to teach anybody anything.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so I feel like I'm a
Mm-hmm.
little bit better spot with, I don't say better, but like different spot with that and could do it. Um, but like you said earlier on in this episode, I think we're moving, it feels like we're moving a little bit away from having that opportunity, if that makes sense. Like I think people are wanting to move on and not dive into this anymore.
Yeah.
And okay, here, I'm gonna be honest. My fear is that I think this platform platforms like this. Again, I'm not solely elevating our podcast, but like I think this thing is needed. I'm worried that this is gonna be needed more than like more than ever, like more than I know or that we know,
Mm. Mm.
in a detrimental, like in a bad way. Like I'm grieved at thinking about how much I think it will be needed. And I'm not gonna go off on a tangent right now, but I I think one obvious elephant in the room is like we mentioned 2016, 2020 contentious presidential elections. 2024 is the next presidential election year, and there's I know a lot of people have checked out and honestly probably don't even know or aren't following super closely. I wouldn't say I'm following super closely, but perhaps closer than some of you listening. But President or former President Trump, there's a high, not like a haha, like funny thing he could run again. Like there's a huge chance, like a huge chance he will be the president again. And that is just such like an indicative thing of that's what I mean when things have not changed. Like that is
Mm.
literally like one of the biggest things that is should be baffling. And in some ways, it's like you can be cynical and be like, well, it's not, of course, like things are just going to get worse, blah, blah, blah. But I think I don't even want to cop out there. Like, I just want to say, like, that is the kind of thing that you have to be turning some level of a blind eye to say things
Mm.
have gotten better, things are changing when we're right back in this situation. And just all the things that are at play with that reality are so crazy. And if you're turned off by me saying that, like this might not be the place for you. I'll just be honest, because I think that's like again a very low level thing to say that is nuts. Like
Yeah.
former president with everything that he brought,
Mm-hmm.
um, every which way, and that is currently like one of the biggest current like is being prosecuted in every pot like is a criminal right
Yeah.
now. Like it's crazy, like or alleged, whatever. Like
Alleged. Yeah. Accused.
it's
Yeah.
so crazy.
Yep. Yep.
Like
Yep.
it's extremely likely he could be the president again. It is like crazy. Anyway, lots of stuff happening still aside from that, and with that I just think like I wish it wasn't true, but I think there's just gonna be a lot to continue to have to unpack.
Yeah.
Um, not because you and I, John Mark, want to like have a place to air out like our thoughts and like get followers by any means, but just that it's a place to like I know it's not good for my mental health to not have a place to listen or to talk about this kind of stuff. And I know other people. I don't know about you. I mean, it, but it's a weird place to be in because it's affirming and it's also sad to regularly have
Mm-hmm.
people seek you out because they don't going through the same thing as like you and I mentioned that we've gone through
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
needing guidance because like I said it's not where it should be. Like I've
Yeah.
helped give counsel. I say give counsel, not counsel because I'm not a counselor, but get, give counsel to people that are in the exact same spot I've left or situate or like a similar situation where it's like, well, anyway, that'd be a whole nother episode. But it's affirming because it's like it's affirms that things we've done in the past, maybe, we're right, even if they felt lonely and wrong or iffy at times. But it's
Hmm.
also sad to think like, why is the same thing still happening to people?
Yeah.
Why are the
Yeah.
same voices still being silenced? Um, in places where we thought we did a bunch of work
Hmm.
to make sure that doesn't happen. I don't know. You got anything to add to that bit?
Yeah.
Do you think we should change
No,
anything, or what do you think moving forward for 2024?
no, I think we should keep talking to the issues we've been talking about and about the issues we've been talking about and inviting people on who have a heart for justice and unity and doing what is right, and upholding what is right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what the future holds and what the election holds. It certainly feels like we're still as polarized as we were. It certainly feels like we haven't learned lessons about dehumanizing language around immigrants or um, other people of color, um, anyone who's different from us. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, what you said about the potential uh, return of the president is true. It is a real, very real possibility. But even if not, kind of those attitudes, the sentiments, the things he put out there still linger. And so, either way, we're facing that. You know what I mean? We're facing
Mm-hmm.
um, subtle and overt racism. Um, so, yeah, but I feel like either way, we're walking into a similar future. Um, yeah. So, like I said, still needed. We still got to be here, still talking about these things, still having guests on who care, um, still sharing resources.
Yeah.
That's what I think we still need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Look, I mean, real quick, we've touched on this. Do you paint with broad strokes for just a second? Do you think that would you say that if you had to choose one or the other right now, like I said, broad strokes, the church and society as we sit here right now is heading towards more, continue to head towards more polarization or more unity, I guess. I guess the church is different. It could be different than the rest of society.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
I think between the pandemic and the civil rights movement in the year 2020 and 2021, 22, and 23, uh, we have fractured along ideologies, belief systems. We're all scrambling to find our people who think the same way and want to belong in the same groups we belong in. Um, I think we'll continue to ripple those things. Those ripples will still happen, like the tremors after an earthquake. The things won't settle down in 24, 25, and maybe even 26. But I don't know. Eventually, it's got to settle out. So,
yeah, yeah, you think,
does that answer your question? Yeah, eventually, I think it'll settle out. But
yeah,
until then, I think we just have to stay the course.
hmm yeah.
Yeah,
I'm right there with you. I'll put you on the spot a little bit with that one, but we got to work it out for us, man.
we do.
Yeah,
We do, but it's good work. It's good work. I
it's
mean,
good work.
yeah, it's hard, it's heavy, but it's good.
Yeah.
And it's good to not go alone.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
sir. And we love all you guys listening. Thank you for supporting us. Whether it's your first episode, whether you started with episode 1 3 years ago. Um, it's been a time these last 3 years, John Mark. We've had a lot of amazing conversations. That's not a pat on our back. That's a pat on the backs of a lot of amazing people, guests that we've come on here. Um, John Mark, thank you for, 2 years ago agreeing to come on board along this journey. It's been
Of
fun,
course. It has
doing
been.
this together, getting to know each other, hearing each other's perspectives on this stuff. And look, real quick, listeners, before we let you go, speaking of support, um, yeah, if you like anything you've heard on this episode or any other episode, or it's been helpful to you, or um been helpful to somebody you know, please consider joining our Patreon. It's in the show notes. For as little as $1 a month, 1, 3, or 5 or more. Um, you can support the show. And by support the show, I mean just give us money that we give away. Or repair the occasional broken cable. But for now, we're just giving all the quote unquote profit, all the money away. To causes that align with what we talk about here on the podcast. And that's going to kind of be a fluid thing of what we feel like is the best use of the money. And right now, we're continuing to give it away to BIPOC college students to pay for the textbooks. And we're about to give away our second round of money. The first time was last semester, and it was really a joy to give
Hmm.
away for almost $500. That was
Yeah.
from you guys, from our current patrons, and then also people that just wanted to be part of it and matched it like on the day, which is really cool. So we're about to roll a little bit more of that out as we're starting a new semester on college campuses. So we're excited to do that. And we just love to have more money to bless and give away to these causes we're talking about on here. So please check out our Patreon if you've never heard about it, and join it again for as little as $1 a month. That might not sound like anything, but it adds up. Every little dollar literally does count and help. So all right, thank you guys for listening. John Mart, thank you for potting with me.
Of course.
The music you're listening to is by our guy Dylan Dent, and our artwork was created by Ashley Bush. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Peace. Nice.